Ooh, what a roller coaster of a session. Kind of bananas.
Yo, look, I ain't saying that I'm rich, cause if I'm honest, I've never been. But when I look at all these other kids, I feel just a little bit ahead of them. You should know the business is competitive. There's a lot of people that I'm better than. Even veterans ain't got the knowledge I do. I've been reinvesting all I ever spent.
Hey, what's up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of Vader Poker, episode 3, A New Hope. In last week's episode, we ended the session with $4,800 in our bankroll, so we're just getting close to that 5K amount. And do we get there in this episode? You're going to have to stick around to the end and find out. This episode's jam-packed with a roller coaster of a session. Our stack just keeps going up and down. We're all in a couple of times. We even hit 2 pair and do something really crazy. You'll have to watch and find out, but it's pretty wild. So we're starting this session off on a positive note, but now let's head back to TCH Social for more hours so we can take advantage of their hours promotion and hopefully win ourselves some extra money. It's time to grind.
Yeah, I was raised well, genetic holy grail. Always had friends in class, never got picked last. Still I feel like an outcast.
Okay, in this next one, don't really know what to tell you. I guess I was feeling myself. I think I had a read on my opponents on the right, and it was a pretty passive table. So 2 limpers on our right, and we look down at Jack 5 of spades. And so again, I think we're feeling ourselves in this episode already. So 2 hands in, so we raised to $15. The button calls, the big blind decides to make the call, and 1 limper folds, and 1 limper decides to make the call. So we're going to this flop, Texas heads up, 4-handed. And the flop comes Jack of Hearts, 9 of Spades, 3 of Hearts. Pretty good flop for our hand, all things considered. We have top pair and a backdoor flush draw. Checks to us, so of course we're going to take a stab at this. Our Jack does need a little bit of protection, so we bet our standard kind of quarter pot when we're about 4-handed, and it folds all the way around to the limper, who decides to make the call. Now we're heads up to the turn, which is a great card for us. It's the 7 of Spades. So it gives us a flush draw along with our top pair, which, empowers us a little bit to bet. So we decide to bet $50, about half pot, and after tanking for quite some time, our opponent decides to put in the call. We're going to see a river. And we smash the river with the 8 of spades, giving us the flush. Checks to us, our opponent only has about 100 left in his stack, so we grip it and rip it all in. Our opponent snap calls, we turn over the flush, and our opponent rivered the straight with the Queen of clubs, 10 of spades. That's very unfortunate river, so what a cooler.
Flooshy, flooshy. Almost a nutter.
Almost.
Yeah.
Okay. We get involved in the very next hand, and it's another straddle pot, and the guy to our immediate right limps. And so we look down at King Jack of Spades, and of course we're going to raise this, and we normally make it about 15. So we up the ante a little bit to $20 and folds all the way back around to the straddler. He looks down, decides he likes money and wants to fold. But our limper, no, he hates money, so he's going to make the call. And now we go to the flop, a true heads up. What is this? Is hell freezing over? No, still warm. Weird. The flop comes King of Diamonds, 9 of Clubs, 7 of Clubs. Pretty good flop for our hand. Checks to us, so we make a half pot bet of $20. And the under the gun 1 limper calls. The turn brings the 8 of Hearts. Not the best card for us. We do block the straight draws, but it does hit a lot of 2 pairs, things of that nature. I think he's probably on a flush draw, and I want to keep all his bluffs in and, give him a chance to bluff the river. We are in position, so we decide to check back on this turn card. The river brings the 3 of diamonds, and just like we wanted, our opponent leads into us for $80, and it doesn't take us long before we make the call, and we are good. Our opponent just had ace high. In this next hand, we're on the button, a great place to be when it comes to poker, and those passive players limp again on our right. We look down at 7-6 of clubs, and so we've got passive players in the game, so of course we're going to raise. So we decide to raise to $20. The small blind, who should have a strong range here, calls. The big blind decides to call, of course in for 2, in for 20. The first limper in the hijack calls, and the cutoff decides, once again, he loves money and decides to make the fold. We go to a flop 4-handed. And the flop comes great for our hand. It comes 6 of diamonds, 8 of clubs, 10 of clubs. So we've got a pair, we've got a straight draw, we got a straight flush draw. So what else do we do besides bet at it? So we take a shot at it. We bet $35 and everybody folds. That's okay. We'll take it down with a pair of 6s. In this next hand, we get involved in yet another big hand, practically all in. I think this pot gets up to like $400 or $500. And of course, it starts under the gun with us, and we raise to $10 after looking at ace-king suited, one of the best hands you can have in poker. That's not a pair. So we raise to 10. Under the gun 1 calls, middle position calls, cutoff calls, and then the big blind 3 bets only to $30. This is a pretty weak 3 bet, indicative of a pretty weak hand. Most big hands aren't going to do that. They're going to make it like, somewhere around the range of like $50, $60, $70, something like that. So we have no choice here but to 4 bet. I'm not going to call and have it call around. So we 4 bet to 100. It gets back to our opponent, and he doesn't think too long before making the call. So I thought he was weak, but now he's calling a pretty big size 4 bet of a little over 3x his raise. So that's interesting. The flop comes jack, deuce, deuce, and we don't have a backdoor flush draw. So I think this is actually not a bad hand to take a stab at. It's a jack high. It's pretty disconnected. He shouldn't have a lot of deuces. He may have some pairs like 10s, queens, 9s, 8s. They're never going to fold. He could have aces and kings and just flatted, although I don't think this is that type of opponent. So we do a C bet. He calls. The turn brings a 6 of clubs. It's pretty much a brick. He checks, but again, it's a brick. So those 8s, those 9s, those queens, they're definitely going to call. So we check back. The river brings a 3rd deuce. Now, if our opponent has a pair, he has a full house. And he comes out leading for $160. It's like, what do we do? The pot's got like $470 in it, and it's $160 to call. So we're getting like over 3 to 1 on our money, which means we only need to be good about 25% of the time. So we tank and tank and tank. We have the nut, no pair. If this guy just has like maybe an 8-9 of hearts or 8-9 of spades or 8-9 of diamonds or something like that, could he be taking a stab at it? So we think for a very long time. I mean, $150 is a big bet. That's almost 100 big blinds in a 1-2 game. So after some deliberation, we make the fold, and our opponent turns over ace-jack offsuit. Good hand to call a 4-bet with, out of position. All right, on to the next one. Okay, y'all, here is that absolute bananas hand that I was talking about. Our under the gun one raises to 15. There's one other caller, and we look in the big blind at queen 5 of clubs. Not actually the worst hand, going 3 ways. Probably not going to be overflushed in most situations. So we decide to go ahead and make the call. And the flop isn't too bad for our hand. We actually hit top pair with the queen. It comes queen of diamonds, 8 of spades, 4 hearts, and we're going to check most flops, especially one like this, to the razor. So we check. The gun bets $25, and the hijack calls. So I think we have nothing really here to do except call. We're kind of way ahead, way behind type situation. So we go ahead and make the call as well. And now we're still 3-handed going to a turn. And that turn brings the 3 of hearts. So doesn't really seem like a really bad card. So we check and it checks around. Okay, we feel pretty good about our queen now. Now the river's a 5 of diamonds. Hey, smash that board with 2 pair. Let's go. So of course we're gonna lead out. The pot's about $120, so we lead out for 80, and our opponent on our left only has like $108, 106 or something like that. So he goes all in. The hijack quickly folds, and before we can make the call, something weird happens. Take a listen.
Straight.
So you can hear my frustration when he says straight. I literally grabbed the chips and I'm about to make the call, but I hadn't put the chips in yet. I hadn't even made the forward motion. I just went to grab them and he goes straight. And I go, are you serious? And I'm like, oh, you kidding me? It's only $20 more. It's like 10% to win the pot if I make the call. But when he says straight, how is he lying? He's definitely got a straight, right? Like, I think he just got excited. And so I decide to fold 2 pair. He doesn't show, and he makes kind of a thing about it, like, oh, all we have to do is call out a hand and it gets people to fold, haha. And then later on, he asks, what 2 pair? I said queen 5, and he said, oh, the 5 that, made your hand also made my hand. So I think he had the 7-6. Makes a lot of sense if you think about it. Some kind of 7-6 suited. Decided to check back the turn because he just pretty much had nothing but a gutter ball. Smash that gutter ball with pretty much the case 5. I don't know. Maybe we saved $20. Maybe we lost a $200 pot for a $20 raise. I don't know. You tell me in the comments. Let's go, chat pros. I know you're going to let me have it on this one.
Okay, quick mid-session update.
was going great. You know, we were up to what, like 800 bucks, 700, something like that. I don't know. And then we ran ace king of clubs into ace jack offsuit for a 4-bet pre where he called out of position. I don't know, it was a little weird. And he gets there and the guy to my left says he has ace jack. He had ace jack. He folded ace jack. Is there anything worse than when you lose a big pot like that to find out you lost to a 2-outer? To a guy that shouldn't have been calling? I should have just taken that down pre, and that would have been it. But no, instead I lose a $400 pot to a 2-outer. What are you gonna do? Feeling good. The table's good. That guy that won with ace jack, that's his second time against ace king, winning with ace jack. So obviously he's running quite well and playing quite loose. Apparently the last time with ace jack was an all in. He's running really good. So it is what it is. Can't run good forever. And then that's where I'm gonna capitalize. At least that's the goal, the hope, plan. We'll see. I don't know. All right. The bomb pot's got to be over by now. So I'm heading back in. Just wanted to say what's up to you fine people. And yeah, if you're enjoying these vlogs, don't forget, like, subscribe, give me the thumbs up, share it with a friend, leave a comment down below. What's your favorite card room in Texas? Let me know. Hey, and if you're rooting for me, you want me to grow that stack, I'm around 500, 450, give or take right now. Smash that thumbs up. Let's grind. Right after break, we immediately get involved in the big blind with a pretty big hand, ace jack of spades. The button limped, small blind limped, so obviously we're going to raise, right? We clearly have the best hand. So we decided to raise to $20, a little bit bigger than we would normally make it, but we're out of position and we don't want both to call. I'd rather be heads up here. So like I said, we raise, the button decides to call, and the small blind, as predicted, folds. So now we're out of position, but we are heads up. And the flop comes pretty favorable for us. It's ace of clubs, king of hearts, 4 of clubs, and I check and the button decides to check. I was planning to check raise, but I was okay with the check. Turn brings another 4. It's a pretty safe card for us. So we're gonna go ahead and lead here. Want to bet something small. We bet 25 and the button calls. The river is the 7 of spades. So we think about it for a while. We decide to bet pot. Pot's about $100, so we go ahead and rip it in for 100. And our opponent, after tanking for a little bit, decides he's gonna lay it down. Ship that one to us, let's go. A few hands later, we're in early position and we look down at a nice 7-6 suited. It's a pretty hand. It's one of the fantastic 4, as Landon Tice would say. Our opponent on our right raises to $15. Normally I would 3-bet or fold this hand, but it was a very, very passive table. I was pretty much the only one liberally 3-betting. So we decided to make the call, thinking it was probably gonna be like 4 ways or something like that. Turns out only a limper calls, and so we're 3-handed. That's a pretty good spot for us, and we're in position. Who'da thunk it? Right? Like I said, passive table. The flop comes queen, queen, 9 with the 9 of hearts. So we have a backdoor straight draw, backdoor flush draw, and it checks to the original opener, and he had a bet sizing tell, which I'm about to take advantage of. So he bet 25, which is about half pot here. Typically, if he had a big, strong hand, he would bet like pot or over pot, because he was always afraid of like a draw or something. So when he bets half pot, I feel pretty good, and I think if I make the call and the limper folds, I can bet a lot of turns if he checks or if he bets small again. So the turn comes the 8 of spades, and our opponent does that small bet thing again. He actually does the same bet and makes it 25 again. And now we're going to jump all over this. This is clearly weakness, and typically when an opponent does this, Bart Hansen teaches this on Crush Life Poker all the time, that the same bet is typically weak. And we have an open-ended straight draw. I wish it was the 8 of hearts, but it's not. So we're going to go ahead and make the raise. It's really strong when someone raises the turn, and our opponent snap folds. He probably had like ace high, king high, something like that, and it was an easy fold for him, just as I suspected it would be. In the next one, we are back in the big blind, and it's another straddled pot. We haven't had one of these in a while, so hey, let's see what we can do here. We've got one limper in early position. It folds to the hijack, and the hijack makes a raise to $20. The cutoff calls, and it folds to us in the big blind with 2 red queens. Once again, we pick up those ladies, and now we've got to think about it. So what do we raise? 60, 80, 100? I really like to make this at least around 80 to 100 range, so that's really close to what we do. We decide to raise to $90. The straddler folds, the limper folds, and it gets back to the hijack, and he decides to make the call. So we're heading to the flop, heads up. And the flop is extremely good for our hand. And we smash this flop with the queen of clubs, 9 of hearts, 7 of clubs. So it checks to us, and we hold all the cards here. So it's kind of hard to really get a bet. It is a little draw heavy. Maybe we get lucky and he hits the, 9s for a set or 7s or something along those lines. So we decide to bet about a quarter pot, and we bet 50 into a pot of about 200. Our opponent goes into the tank for a little bit before deciding to make the call. Now we've got a pot of about $300, and our opponent only has about 300 behind. And the turn comes the deuce of hearts. Now there's 2 flush draws on board, so typically when this happens, we're going to be pretty polarizing because we'd like to do this with flush draws as well. If we turn a flush draw, or we happen to flop one, say ace king of hearts, ace king of clubs, something like that. It's a really good opportunity for us to just rip it for pot here. Again, we would do this with a lot of our bluffs. It's very polarizing, but we're either going to be strong or we got some bluffs. So our opponent once again goes into the tank. He thinks and thinks and thinks and thinks and thinks. I love putting people to the grinder. It's one of my favorite things to do. But unfortunately, he folds what only could have been probably pocket jacks or pocket tens. Oh well. But a pretty nice sized pot nonetheless. On to the next one. All right, there's no time to pause. We look at another big hand, pocket tens. We're in early position. Player on our right limped, so we make our standard raise to 15. It folds to the cutoff. He decides to put in the call. It folds back to the limper, and the limper decides he wants to join the party. He hates money. So now we're heading to the flop 3-handed. And the flop's a pretty good one for our hand considering that we really don't have top pair or top 2 pair set or anything. Comes the queen of clubs, 9 of clubs, jack of clubs. So we have an open-ended straight draw, open-ended straight flush draw. We may have the only club. We may have the highest club. So we might have the best flush draw. So of course we're gonna bet out here and we bet our typical 33% pot. The cutoff thinks about it for a little bit and decides to raise to 35. So it's essentially a click back, which is fine with me. But he may have actually already flopped the flush. He might have already flopped the straight. Of course, we heavily blocked the straight, but he could have 2 pairs, something like that. So we're going to go ahead and make the call and see a turn. And the turn brings us exactly what we're looking for. It's the 2 of clubs. So now only 2 clubs beat us, the ace of clubs and the king of clubs. So we check, our opponent checks back, and the river is the ace of clubs. So now there's only 1 club that beats us. It's the king of clubs. Obviously, there's no straight flush out there. So we feel pretty confident about our hand, given that our opponent checked back. Yeah, maybe he could have checked back king of clubs. That's certainly possible. So we decide to bet $50, hoping to get a crying call out of some very, very low club. So our opponent, he goes into the tank. It's a 5-card flush board. And, you know, I could be doing this with a bluff, trying to get him off a chop. I don't like calling here. The best he could hope for is a chop, as I mentioned, but everything else beats him. And of course, if he has the king of clubs, he's going to raise. So he calls, we turn over our 10s with the 10 of clubs. He sits there for a second and he looks at me and goes, obviously I don't have the king of clubs. And I said, yeah, I think you would have raised with that if you had the king of clubs. And he folds and we take down a nice $200 pot at 1-2. I think it's time for another bluff, don't you? If you want to see another bluff, smash that like and let's see what we can do.
We'll accept any number at all, a 1 or a 2 or a 3. But how about a 4? It's that simple. I know you can do this. Let's start with French Stewart, who's grinning like an idiot, and you wrote three. Combination of 3 and 5. Simply stunning. And you wagered Texas with a dollar sign in front of it. I'm speechless. Mr. Reynolds.
Yeah, don't bother. I didn't write anything.
Good work. All right. Finally, Mr. Connery, and you wrote a letter V. Well, I tell you what, my friend, V is a Roman numeral, so despite your best efforts, you answered correctly. Let's see what you wagered. Suck it, Trebek.
All right, thanks for smashing that like. Let's go ahead and run this bluff. What do you say? It's a straddled pot, and we're the first one to open, and we've kind of learned our lesson with $15. A lot of people call, so we're going to bump this up just a little bit to $20 and try to get this heads up against the straddler. So that's what we do. The big blind calls and the straddle calls. So okay, 3-handed, not too bad. And the flop comes again pretty favorable for our hand. It comes queen jack of hearts with the 6 of diamonds. So we have gutter straight draw and a flush draw. Checks to us, and of course we're gonna bet. So we lead out for $20 and only the big blind calls. The turn brings the 3 of spades. And another good card for our hand, it's pretty much a brick. And so we're gonna size up once again on these type of turns. So the pot's got about $100, so we bet $100 and it gets a snap fold from our opponent and we win with 9 high. Let's go. Okay, we've got another doozy of a hand for you here. So this one is interesting because I play it just a little bit different than I would typically. The guy on my right who'd been relatively tight decides to make an initial open to $22. There's no straddle, there's no limper. He just opens to 22, 11 big blinds. That's usually indicative of a pretty big hand like ace king or something and really wants to try to go heads up. So we look down at ace queen and I think we can just flat call here. I don't think 3-betting makes a lot of sense. Like we're only gonna get called called by better or get 4-bet jammed on. So we make the call. The flop comes jack high, jack of spades, 3 of hearts, deuce of diamonds. And the initial raiser checks, and so I really think he has ace king now. I probably could have taken a bet here, but I decide to go ahead and check back. Now the turn brings an ace, so hey, that's great, right? But now our opponent bets. So we're like, okay, this guy really played this like ace king. So it's of course a little troublesome, but what are we gonna do? Fold ace queen here? I don't think so, but there's really no point in raising. If he has like ace 10, we just have him crushed. And I really want to bet out of him on the river, but that's really all I can think of that we beat. I don't think this guy is raising with ace 9, not to that sizing. We kind of reluctantly make the call. The rivers are pretty much a brick. It's the 8 of clubs. And unless he has pocket eights, which I don't think he has based on the action and the bet size pre-flop. So when he leads out here for $55, I tank for a long time, but I decide to make the call, and our opponent says,
Two pair.
That's right, everybody. Ace jack offsuit again, out of position. Oh well, maybe we should have 3-bet this one, huh? So we decide, that's it for us. We're gonna call it a night. It's just too many beats to ace jack, and we've been so up and down that we've finally grinded it back to around that $500 range, and it's time for us to say goodnight. What a roller coaster of a session. I mean, kind of bananas. We go up to about 700 or 800, lose to ace jack with either ace king or ace queen, go up to 700 or 800, lose to ace jack, out of position every time. And it was both times the guy to my right and 2 different guys, but the seat to my immediate right. Isn't that weird? Weird stuff that happens sometimes in this game. But yeah, I just, the fact that I put together, a $224 win. So like over the last 2 sessions, I'm up like $50, so like $10 an hour. Not even, probably like $6 an hour. I'm just joking. It's only 2 sessions, not a big deal, but still frustrating to say the least that, if it wasn't for 2 bad beats, actually really 3 bad beats and a couple of like weird situations, I mean, I have at least 1K profit, if not more. I mean, 12, 1300 range today, but instead just a $200 profit. So, $50 an hour, whatever, it's fine. I'll tell you this though, this is not the pace we need to be at in order to really make another 15 grand in a month and a half. Now, April just started. I've got basically 2 months to make 15 grand. That's like 7 grand a month, 7.5 a month. That's not peanuts. So, like I said, we're gonna have to have a couple of really good run good sessions to make up for some of this run bad we've been having over the last several weeks. So, I think I've only put together a string of like 2 or 3 wins in the last, few weeks. So, not great. I don't know what the total is. It's really windy, so I'm gonna get out of here. I'll put the total remaining somewhere over here. Whatever. All right, we're out. Peace.